2 Corinthians 4. Now watch this. 4:4. I'll start in 3 because he gives the explanation. This is Paul writing to the Corinthian church. Verse 3. And even if our gospel is veiled, the gospel's the good news of Jesus, it's veiled to those who are perishing. The God of this world has blinded the minds of unbelievers, so they cannot see the light of the gospel of the glory of Christ, who is the image of God. The God of this world is referring to Satan, and what this verse is telling us is that Satan has blinded the minds of unbelievers so they can't see the light. Remember John 12, the light. Walk in the light while you have it, because darkness is coming. You won't have the light much longer. So they cannot see the light of the glory of God. The light of the gospel of the glory of Christ, who is the image of God. Paul says in verse 5, we do not preach ourselves, but Jesus Christ is Lord, and ourselves as your servants for Jesus' sake. For God, who said, let light shine out of darkness, made his light shine in our hearts to give us the light of the knowledge of the glory of God in the face of Christ. Hey, what he just said there was, Satan has blinded unbelievers' eyes with darkness. And I'm going to explain what that darkness is in a minute. But for now, there's darkness and there's light. And the gospel is given, and unbelievers cannot see the light of the glory of the gospel. What that means is this. This message of Jesus offering forgiveness, John 12, Jesus offering himself, come to the light, walk in the light. This offer of light is glorious, whether people see it or not. Okay? Blind people cannot see the sun. Does that make the sun any less bright? No. Same with the gospel. The message of Jesus and the offer of his forgiveness is bright, glorious light, whether unbelievers see it or not. It's kind of like this. God exists whether you believe it or not. And one day you'll find out. Same with the gospel. It is bright, it is shining, it is blazing truth. And you can't see it, doesn't mean it's not blazing bright. That's what this verse is saying. But what it says about those who do see it as bright, it says that God has shone the light in their hearts so they can see that it's bright. Let me read it again. The God of this world has blinded the minds of unbelievers so they cannot see the light of the gospel of the glory of Christ, who is the image of God. Verse 6, for God, who said, let light shine out of darkness, I think that's a reference to creation when God said, let there be light, made his light shine in our hearts to give us the light of the knowledge of the glory of God in the face of Christ. Okay? God enables us to see the gospel as bright. God enables us to embrace the gospel. And if he doesn't, we don't see it as bright. We don't want it. We don't care for it. We willingly reject and go after something else, whether it be sin in the form of whatever, drugs, porn, sex, whatever. We don't see the gospel. We would rather enjoy our sin, darkness, which Satan uses to blind us, fame, glory, position, you name the sin, it's darkness, and Satan uses that darkness to keep believers from coming to Jesus because they don't want to give up their sin. And they willingly say, I'd rather keep my sin than come to Jesus and give up my sin. But for those who see their sin as terrible now, and they're like, I hate my sin, that is a miracle. Because Jesus said in John 3:19, light has come into the world, speaking of himself again. He's always calling himself light. But men love the darkness rather than the light. And they will not come into the light. Why? For fear their deeds will be exposed. It's all about deeds. Sin. But, he says, for those that do come into the light, they come so that it can be seen that what has been done by God. In other words, it's only God that can make us turn from our self-righteousness, whether it's trying to keep the law, whether it's our love of drugs, which is a powerful, powerful influence in our culture. Whether it's alcohol, whether it's porn, whether it's sex outside of marriage, outside of that context, which is good, whether it's fame, right? These musicians and actors and all these people who are pursuing fame, name the sin, Satan offers it, and they go after it, and it keeps them from the gospel because they love their sin so much. And it can be morality. The Jewish people. Staying away from drugs, staying away from porn, staying away from all the stuff that the law says no. But yet, keeping all this law, keeping all this law, keeping all this law. And what did Jesus say? You're full of dead man's bones. You love the praise of men. You love to stand in the streets and pray so men can hear you pray. You love the chief seats in the synagogue. You love that people call you teacher. You're in it for the pride. That's your darkness. Your darkness is self-righteousness. That's the darkness that the Jewish people ran for, and the light comes into that culture and says, turn from your sin, turn from your self-righteousness, turn from your law-keeping, and turn to me. Admit your sin, admit you're sinful, and I'll forgive you. And they say, no, I don't want that. And just like Romans 10 said, they sought to establish their own righteousness. That's the darkness that morality produces. Whether it's law-keeping, whether it's good works, whether it's going to Mass every day, it's a self-righteous darkness, and it's darkness nonetheless. In fact, Jesus said to the Pharisees, if the light within you, this is so profound, listen to this. If the light within you is darkness, how great is that darkness? In other words, if you think you have the light, and the light is really darkness, then that's a deep, deep darkness. And that was the condition of the Jewish people. They thought they had the light, but it wasn't. It was darkness. And Jesus, just like in John 12, continued to tell them, stay out of the darkness and come to the light. I am the light. And he does this over and over and over and over again, and they will not come to the light, Jesus, because they love their darkness. Do you see it? Okay, let's look at it some more. We got 10 more minutes. I really want to hit this hard, because this is so profound. Go to Romans 9 real quick. Verse 14, Romans 9:14. The context of this is that we are on the judgment seat and God is in the guilty chair, and we are calling the shots on God. You see how the roles switch? God's actually the judge of the universe, but in this passage, we are the judge and God is on the guilty seat. It's profound. Look, what shall we say? Is God unjust? We're accusing God of injustice. We are the judge. We're going to judge God at this point. And that's what the question being asked is here. Is God unjust? And look at the answer. Not at all. For he says to Moses, I will have mercy on whom I will have mercy, and I will have compassion on whom I will have compassion. It does not therefore depend on man's desire or effort, but on God's mercy. The context of this is salvation. And what it says is God is not unjust if he shows mercy to some and shows compassion to some and then lets the other ones stay in their darkness. He's not unjust for doing that. Why? Because they actually love the darkness. That's why it's not unjust. And I actually loved my darkness. But God, in his mercy, in his grace, and in his compassion said, you're going to begin to hate the darkness because I'm going to cause you to hate the darkness. And unless God causes that hatred by the new birth, the shining of the light into the heart, you will continue to love your darkness by your own will. Your own free will loves darkness, and it will choose to stay in the darkness unless God shines that light of 2 Corinthians 4 into your heart. And that's what this verse is saying. God is not unjust if he chooses some to shine the light into, and some he allows them to continue to choose their darkness. What it's called, what I've been hearing it called more recently, and I think it's correct, is judicial hardening or judicial blinding. In other words, look at Romans 1 real quick.